On my birthday, instead of waiting for my husband and son to come home to celebrate with me, I received a video from my husband's first girlfriend. In the video, my husband and my son were with her, and my son was hugging her, saying he wished she could be his mother. After seeing that, instead of calling him to confront him, I silently packed my suitcase and signed the divorce papers. It was unusual for my husband Dominic to come home at midnight and find the house completely dark. No matter what time it was, I always left a light on for him. That night, he handed our son Grayson over to the housekeeper and went straight to the master bedroom. I was sitting on the sofa with a carefully packed suitcase by my side and the divorce agreement on the coffee table in front of me. Dominic frowned. "Paisley, what is this? Another one of your dramatics?" I didn't have the strength for his criticism. My voice came out calm and firm. "I want a divorce." His face showed disbelief. "Why? Because I forgot your birthday?" "It doesn't matter," I replied, pushing the divorce agreement toward him. "Sign it. Let's end this." He flipped through the pages mockingly. "You're leaving empty-handed? Where will you go without me?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips. He was so sure he had me trapped, thinking I had no one in Harrowville and nothing to hold on to. I pushed the papers even closer. "Sign it. Don't waste time." For a moment, he hesitated. Then his voice hardened. "Fine. Divorce it is, but Sonny's custody is not negotiable. You won't get him." Suddenly, Grayson appeared, looking at me with tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm staying with Dad. I don't want to go with you. You're a horrible mother. A witch." "That's enough, Grayson," Dominic snapped. But Grayson's rage didn't subside. "If you hadn't gotten in the way of Dad and Marisa, she'd be my mom now." I cut the tension with that same cold voice. "I don't care." "Grayson, I don't care about anything. I just want the divorce." That word left Dominic in silence. He clenched his jaw, and his eyes darkened with frustration. "Are you sure about this?" I tossed the pen onto the table. "Sign it. Let's end this." Dominic's frustration gave way to a flicker of doubt. Before he could sign, I grabbed my copy, took my suitcase, and headed for the door. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m., sharp at City Hall. Don't be late," I said without hesitation. Just as I was about to walk out, Dominic grabbed my wrist tightly. "Let go," I said coldly. He sneered. "In such a rush to leave? You already have a lover?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Dominic, I've never hated you more than I do right now." His grip loosened, and before he could say anything else, I grabbed my suitcase and left. I felt the door shut behind me like the sound of my freedom. The airport was bustling as I prepared to board the flight. Just before I crossed the boarding gate, my phone vibrated. I answered without checking the caller ID. It was Grayson's voice, sharp and desperate, asking me for something trivial. I stayed calm and told him to ask Marisa. His whining grew louder, and then I heard Dominic's irritated voice. "Paisley, why are you arguing with a child?" I was already boarding the plane, unmoved. If a child doesn't understand, then the adult should, don't you think? As the plane took off, the city shrank beneath my feet. It was over. I had left everything behind. 4 years later, I returned to Harrowville, this time for a meeting in the hospital director's office. Jonathan, the director, greeted me with a smile. We briefly talked about my experience in Harrowville and my work. Before he could convince me to take on a class, my phone vibrated. I quickly told him I had something urgent to deal with and stepped out. A few minutes later, in the elevator, I saw the Vanderbilt heir accompanied by a mysterious woman. It was Dominic with Marisa. I smiled bitterly. He had accused me of being paranoid, insisting there was nothing between them. But there they were, about to get married. He had never publicly acknowledged me. The elevator bell rang, announcing we had reached the ground floor, and as the doors opened, I came face to face with Dominic. He had an imposing presence, and his gaze was piercing. "Excuse me," I said coldly, walking past him without giving him another glance. He grabbed my wrist, demanding an explanation for why I disappeared without notice for 4 years. I pulled away from his grip. "I gave up my son, Dominic. What right do you have to demand anything from me?" A car honked near the entrance, and before I could move, a man called my name. I felt Dominic tighten his grip on my wrist. "Paisley, who is he?" he asked harshly. The echo of my heels against the hospital's marble floor blended with the subtle ticking of the wall clock. The third-floor reception area was nearly deserted. Only a drowsy old woman sat on a green armchair, and the faint beep of a heart monitor came from a nearby room. I was only there to pick up a folder with the new medical training schedule. Nothing more. Just another day. Then I saw him. He was standing by the coffee machine, taller than I remembered, with a teenage face that still held traces of the child I had once held in my arms. Grayson. My heart skipped a beat. He saw me. His eyes, Dominic's eyes, pierced through me with a slow, painful recognition. His body tensed. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. For several long seconds, we stood motionless, sharing the same air like strangers trapped in a frozen scene. The pain etched on his face was almost tangible. He stepped back. "Do you work here?" he asked bluntly, almost challengingly. His voice had changed. It was no longer a child's. It was deep, rough, and filled with something that hurt more than any insult. Disappointment. "I work here," I replied with a steady but soft voice. My hands clenched at my sides. "And you? Visiting someone?" He scoffed like my question was ridiculous. "Of course. My mother." Before I saw her, I heard the tapping of her heels. As always. Marissa appeared around the corner with the confidence of someone who rehearses every entrance. She wore a navy blue blazer that screamed, "Perfect wife." And next to her, Grayson visibly relaxed as if he had found safe harbor. She placed a possessive hand on his shoulder. "What an unexpected meeting," she said, looking at me as if I were something forgotten in a corner. "I didn't think I'd run into you here, Paisley." "Still in Harrowfell?" "Yes," I replied, keeping my composure. "And you?" "Oh, you know, taking care of being the woman Dominic deserved from the start." Her smile was venomous and rehearsed. Grayson looked at me, and for a second, he almost seemed to hesitate, but said nothing. "Is something wrong?" I asked, looking at him. He looked away. Marissa stepped forward. "You know what's funny?" she continued, licking her lips. "Some mothers are replaceable. Others are simply forgotten. The funny thing is, some women confuse motherhood with manipulation." "I guess some women confuse manipulation with motherhood," I replied in a sharp murmur. "Grayson," she called, ignoring my response. "Let's go get the car. Your father's waiting." They walked away together, but just before turning the corner, Grayson looked back for a brief second and lowered his gaze. I turned to leave and then stopped. Dominic was standing next to a marble column, arms crossed, his face partially hidden under the fluorescent light. The same dark suit, the same calculated expression, but something in his eyes was different. Darker, heavier. "Are you enjoying yourself?" I asked indifferently. He took a step forward, barely making a sound on the polished floor. 4 years and you just show up. You didn't even talk to him." "He talked to me," I said. "He told me you taught him to forget me. Congratulations. It worked." "You ran away," he said through clenched teeth, barely a whisper. "You disappeared like he meant nothing. Don't come to me talking about what matters, Dominic. You never gave me that." He blinked slowly, as if my words wounded him. "And your new companion?" he asked, referring to the man by the car. "Who is he? Another one of your secrets?" "It's none of your business." "So now you're an expert at vanishing and reappearing when it's convenient, huh? Or maybe you never learned how to let me go, Paisley." Jonathan's voice cut through like a gust of fresh air. He approached with a concerned smile, his hands in the pockets of his lab coat. "Everything all right?" "Now it is," I answered, turning slightly toward him. Dominic examined him with the gaze of a predator. "Jonathan," he said, extending his hand stiffly. "Dominic Vanderbilt." "I know who you are," Jonathan replied while shaking his hand, not smiling. They stared at each other for a couple of seconds, just a little too long. "I was showing Dr. Paisley around the hospital," Jonathan clarified, emphasizing the word doctor as a subtle reminder. "We're negotiating a potential hire," Jonathan clarified, emphasizing the word doctor as a reminder. Dominic stepped back slightly, narrowing his eyes. "Of course, she's always been great at running from the hardest problems, even from her own family." "Dominic," I murmured, warning him. He smiled. That smile he wore when he wanted to make someone bleed without touching them. "I'm glad to see you." "Paisley? Really?" And then he walked away. Jonathan watched him until he disappeared. "That's your ex?" he asked. I nodded. "He still doesn't realize I left. I think he's about to find out the hard way." Outside, the breeze was sharp despite the clear sky. The hospital's large window reflected the golden afternoon light. And I stood there, by a column, watching the black car in the distance. Marissa got in first. Grayson hesitated. His hand clung to the door handle, but he looked back. He saw me. Our eyes met through the glass. There was no rage, no love, just something new. Maybe doubt, maybe memory. And in the end, he got into the car, though he kept looking back until the door shut. The day moved on. I gathered my things from the locker room in the back of the hospital. Then I heard unmistakable footsteps, expensive shoes. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Now you always leave through the back door. Dominic's voice broke the silence. I closed my locker without answering, slung my bag over my shoulder, and started walking. He followed me. I just want to talk. Conversations between us always end in reproach or threats, I replied, continuing down the hallway. This time I didn't stop. I looked at him. His face looked more tired than I remembered. Sunken eyes, but on his lips was still that smirk, the one that made him look like he always got his way. Dinner? He offered. Just that. Dominic, it makes no sense. We're nothing now. Maybe that's why it makes more sense than ever. There was a pause. He knew where to press, and he did. You owe me at least an explanation. Why did you leave like that? Why didn't you ever come for Grayson? I closed my eyes. One dinner, 7:30, I said without hesitation. But if you ask even one wrong question, I'll get up and leave. He smiled. I couldn't tell if it was defeat or victory. The restaurant was the same. The lamps still hung over the tables with their soft amber glow. The instrumental music was barely audible. The same scent of fresh bread, herbs, and expensive wine. Nothing had changed, except me. Dominic was already seated. He had a glass of red wine poured and another one empty, waiting for me. I sat down without smiling. He pushed the glass toward me. For coming, he said, raising his own. He clinked his glass against mine, but I didn't toast. Talk. I'm listening. He studied me closely, as if searching for a crack in my armor. The wedding with Marissa has been postponed, he said suddenly. Postponed or canceled? He shrugged. We're still deciding. I laughed without humor. Funny, I thought you'd already decided everything for me and for Grayson. Do you still care? Does it matter? He leaned forward, holding his glass but not drinking from it. I'm not here to argue, Paisley. Then what for? To pretend you didn't destroy everything? His jaw tightened, though his gaze didn't waver from mine. You know Marissa showed up after we were already broken? You were distant, and I used that to find emotional comfort, he said. You've always had a talent for justifying cheating. And you've always had a talent for running before hearing the explanation. My wine glass remained untouched. The food arrived, but neither of us touched our plates. Dominic looked down, speaking softly. He doesn't ask about you, but sometimes I hear him murmuring your name in his sleep. Once, he even screamed it. I closed my eyes. Don't tell me that. Don't use it now. I'm just telling you the truth, Paisley. You were everything to him, and you destroyed it. With videos, with lies, with replacements. I know. That phrase hung in the air like a suspended confession. I hated you for a long time, he said. But I hate even more that I can't get you out of my head. The soft background music seemed to fade. Or maybe it was just the tension intensifying, until someone cleared their throat beside us. Jonathan. What a surprise, he said, looking from Dominic to me. Jonathan, I began, but he raised his hand. It's okay. I'm just here to pick up a takeaway order. He looked away at Dominic. Funny seeing you here. I thought you were in Paris with your fiancé. Dominic gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Plans change. Some people don't, Jonathan noted, walking away from the table. Dominic said nothing for a while. This doesn't mean anything, he finally said. This dinner? I answered. I know. Though it didn't sound as firm as I hoped. You and Jonathan? He asked, swirling the wine in his glass. Are you serious? I let out a joyless laugh. Are you seriously asking me that? After Marissa? I'm just asking, not judging. Dominic, you judge even when you're silent. He set his fork down on the plate with too much force. It's funny. I always noticed the way he looked at you since you arrived in Harrafell. The kind of man who waits for you to stumble so he can be there to catch you. And you always had a gift for seeing enemies where there were only decent people. Silence returned, until he murmured unexpectedly, "Does he touch you?" The fork slipped from my hand. "Don't you dare," I hissed, ice in my voice. "It's just a question. One you no longer have the right to ask." He ran his hands down his face. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I asked." "Yes, you do, Dominic. You know exactly why." He looked at me with a deep intensity, full of unspoken words, but he said nothing. I paid my share of the bill, ignoring Dominic's silent look trying to stop me. He stood as I did. "Paisley." "No, Dominic. It was just dinner, just a conversation, and it meant nothing." "It did mean something," I replied. "It proved to me that I was right to leave." I turned and took 3 steps toward then I stopped and looked back. He was still sitting there, at the same table, the food untouched, the wine half full, surrounded by the memory of what we once were. For the first time, Dominic looked small. I walked away. The doorbell rang at 7:47 p.m., sharp like a punch to the chest. I looked through the peephole and didn't recognize him at first, but then I saw it clearly. The haircut, tense shoulders, hesitant eyes under the hood. I opened the door. "Grayson." He hesitated, but then stepped into the scent of my home. Ginger tea, old books. Silence. It wrapped around him. "I didn't think you'd open. I never thought you'd knock." He dropped his backpack on the floor. Marissa yelled at me. "She said I was ungrateful just because I asked her the real reason you left. She said you ran off with another man, but I heard Dad say something different." "What did you hear?" "That it was him who sent that video, the one on your birthday." I held my breath. "He said he wanted to open my eyes, that you were unstable. But now I don't know who was right anymore. I don't understand why you left without saying anything." "I was 9. He sank onto the sofa like he couldn't stand. "I really hated you. And still, always. What if it was all a lie? I saw that video, Grayson. On my birthday. Alone, no cake, no candles." He looked at me, unblinking. "I saw you hugging the woman who stole my husband. I heard you say you wished she was your mother. I was just a kid, I barely remember it. But it hurt me so much I couldn't look you in the eyes. I got on a plane and ran away because I didn't know how to face that pain." He lowered his gaze. "Do you hate me?" "No, I only hated myself for believing I was irreplaceable." His eyes welled up. "Then why didn't you come back?" "Because you called me a witch." He swallowed hard, clearly affected, and I was glad he felt it. "Sometimes pain means growth." "I'm really sorry," he whispered. "I just needed a mother who stayed. And I needed a son who called." There was silence. "And now?" he asked. "Now we're here, and that's more than I thought we'd have." He nodded like someone who didn't know what to say. Loud knocks echoed at the door. "I'll get it," said Grayson, getting up. When he opened the door, Marissa appeared. Flawless makeup and that smile that never reached her eyes. "Grayson! God, I was so worried. Your father's desperate looking for you." "I know," he replied, not moving from the doorway. She tried to come in, but he didn't step aside. "What are you doing here?" Marissa asked, her smile cracking when she saw me at the back of the room. "He came to hear the truth," I replied. Marissa turned to Grayson. "Her truth? She abandoned you. I was there. I raised you. You trained me. You trained me to hate her, and it worked for a while. But you know what else you did?" She fell silent. "You taught me what it means to manipulate someone. Thanks for that." Grayson tried again, his voice shaking. "Leave, Marissa. Now!" She hesitated, maybe unsure of what to say. For the first time, she actually left. When Dominic arrived, the door was already open. Grayson was still on the sofa, drinking tea. I was standing. "I came to get my son," Dominic said, in the quietest voice I'd ever heard from him. "He'll leave when he wants to," I replied. Grayson didn't move. "Did you tell him the truth?" Dominic asked. "I told him enough," I sighed. "I ruined everything, Paisley. You always thought you could control everything, even emotions." He took a step forward. "I still love you. I still remember you," I said. "But it's not the same." Dominic lowered his eyes. "And if—" "Dominic," I cut him off. "What we had is buried. It won't bloom again. Sometimes, love just isn't enough." He nodded in defeat. Take care of him, he whispered, motioning to Grayson. Now he gets to choose who takes care of him. Dominic left without looking back. Night fell slowly. The silence no longer felt heavy. It was comforting. Grayson was washing his mug in the kitchen. Can I stay a few days? Of course, I said, nodding softly, like someone who wasn't used to being accepted without conditions. We could watch a movie. We could do everything we didn't do before. He gave me a small, genuine smile. We sat on the couch together. He held the remote. I sat with my legs crossed. No one spoke as the credits rolled. But we were there. For the first time, we were there together.